Okay, so what Dan's going to cover is the future of stock chart analysis, how technology, artificial intelligence, and cloud-based systems can reduce workload and generate more winning trades.
So thank you very much, Brad, for putting this on and for having us today. And thank you to everybody who's in the audience to watch our presentation today. I'm here to introduce you to TrendSpider. We're a fintech startup, and we're innovating in the area of technical analysis using unique technologies, things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, algorithm, math, all kinds of different things to kind of help traders make smarter, more efficient trading decisions when they're analyzing charts. So, just a brief overview. We've been around since 2016. So we've been developing this technology for a while. Our platform has several patent applications out on it, so it's a patent pending technology platform. We're based in Chicago and Denver, but we have staff all over the place. A lot of our development team is in Europe. We're kind of a dispersed group here. And since going live last March, when we turned our website up and let people know that we existed, we've had over 4,000 traders sign up to use our software. Our mission is to essentially level the playing field, right? I'm here in Chicago, and I know a lot of the prop trading guys, right? And those firms have 300 developers and 10 different traders, right? The retail trader is at numerous disadvantages in the markets, from the technology they use to their just human attention span to their lack of ability to be consistent in what they do. So, our mission is to empower traders with modern technology to level the playing field and to help them make smarter and more profitable trading decisions. TrendSpider is, I get asked this question a lot. What is TrendSpider, right? We're a bunch of different things all in one. But predominantly, we're a new age modern charting platform that was built by traders for traders. And specifically technical traders. I've traded myself since 2008. Jake, who's one of our founding team members, has traded since he was a teenager. Our head developer and CTO, has spent a career in the stock charting industry. We're all obsessed with charts. We all spend a lot of our time trading, and we built this tool to make our own lives better, but also to make lives better for all the traders out there who suffer from the same things that we do. So we're a modern platform in a space where there hasn't been any real innovation in over a decade. And we use lots of math and AI and algorithms to help you make smarter decisions and get more out of your charts. I like to say that TrendSpider is not just a different charting platform, but it's a different way to think about charting. So what do we help traders with? Well, our mission is to help with the entire gamut, right? The entire cycle of a trade. So we want to assist traders with identifying setups, right? We want to help them analyze those charts and visualize the data that the chart contains. We want to help them develop and test strategies, right? And in a lot of cases, this means ruling out strategies that don't work. We want to help them with crunching charts, right? Finding trend lines, finding fib levels, identifying patterns. We want to help them compare timeframes, because we know as traders ourselves that long-term trends impact short-term price movements in dramatic ways. And then finally, and this is a very big one for me, one that's kind of personal to me, is we want to help traders monitor their charts and monitor their setups. As an early trader, when I first started, I had a really hard time paying attention to the chart. And you're like in a day trade, but then your phone rings, and you get distracted and washed out. Or my daughter would run in the room. Different things would happen that would throw me off because I wasn't able to just pay attention to 50 different charts all day long to keep track of the stocks I'm watching, the stocks I'm in, the stocks I'm trying to get out of. It's very difficult. So that's one area where we really want to innovate and help people, because we know that a lot of traders are part-time. A lot of traders have day jobs, lives, careers, and things that get in the way of their trading. We solve for a lot of different problems with our technology. So in addition to kind of helping redefine the process, we also help remove some of the challenges from it. I don't know a single trader out there who doesn't occasionally have bias in their analysis. They really want the stock to go up, so they see a bullish pattern on it, even when it's not. We as humans struggle with being consistent. We very often will analyze one chart one way, and when we get to the next chart, we forget to zoom out, or we, have a mental hiccup and do things differently. I know a lot of experienced traders, people who've been trading for decades, who still fall victim to FOMO, right? They just get excited, right? They just, get in at the wrong time and end up turning a good plan into a bad one. There's all kinds of stuff, and I'm not going to go through this whole list here, but there's a lot of different things that get in the way of average traders' ability to execute in the markets, and a lot of them come from the analysis. So that's kind of the mission we have here and the problem we're trying to solve for. So, now that we kind of talked a little bit about the problem, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the solution to it. For us, it's injecting automation into the analysis process itself. That means removing some of the discretionary nature of the chart analysis, all right, and replacing it with customizable algorithms that will perform the analysis the same way for you each time. What we mean by that is you can configure TrendSpider to detect trend lines your way, and every time you pull up a chart, it's going to do it the same way. And that gives you consistency and the ability to do it basically get the same type of result every time. And this is important when it comes to any type of analysis, from trend lines to fibs to candles, to support resistance zones, to any type of analysis you do, is to do it the same way each time, because otherwise, how do you know if your analysis system and trading approach is effective or not? The truth is, most of us who think we have a system don't follow it precisely. And because of that, our trend lines are different each time. And because of that, our decisions are different each time. So we help traders make smarter decisions by allowing them to automate their style of, joint trend lines, fib levels, or whatever it is. We then tack on to the automated analysis capabilities what we call supportive capabilities, right? And these are things to help you develop strategies like backtesting. These are things to help you understand the market, like proprietary visualizations, such as our raindrops, which I'm going to get into in a little bit here. We also make it very easy to combine data from multiple time frames onto one chart. And this form of multi-time frame analysis lets you kind of see the forest and the trees at the same time. Finally, we tie it all together with what we consider to be one of the most powerful alerting tools in the market. And if we have some time, I'll actually log into the system and show you how this works and a few of the different types of alerts. But these are some of the most powerful things you can do, because they let you allow the market to just come to you instead of you trying to chase a chart or chase the market. So let's jump into some of these. I'm probably not going to have time to cover every feature the platform has, but I just want to cover some of the high-level capabilities so you can see how they work. We're going to start with trend lines. So one of our core features is automated trend line detection. And when I present a chart like this is Microsoft 1 hour chart. I took this screenshot a little bit ago today. So it's the up-to-date chart. And you show this chart to 100 different traders and ask them to analyze it, you're going to end up with 90 different sets of trend lines. It's a choppy chart. There's a lot of different stuff going on, right? You can draw wedges, you can draw broadening formations, you can draw all different kinds of stuff on this chart. And everybody's going to have a different approach. And, that's something that when we were first building our technology that we learned. We learned very early on that, no two traders will analyze the same chart in the same way. And it's not that everybody is wrong and only one person is right. It's really the confluence of everything that everybody sees in the chart that creates the true trend in it, right? So in order to identify trend lines in this chart, we start by trying to find every possible line that might exist anywhere on it. And this looks something like this. Right, and what we're doing here is we're basically, within parameters that the user can define, connecting every peak to every other peak, every valley to every other valley, and so forth, until we've identified every possible line that might exist on the chart. Excuse me. And this is useful because we don't actually know what trend lines are in effect at any moment. We don't know, what trend lines the big money and institutions and prop firms are watching. We only know really as traders what we eyeball out of the chart. And we know that that's not an effective method for analyzing a chart. When you just eyeball it, you're being very subjective. So we start by finding every line that may possibly exist anywhere. We then start to filter these lines down, right? And we start to remove lines using formulas that will calculate for each line that we found how many times price has touched it, bounced off it, broken through it, We analyze every single possible trend line one at a time to calculate its past respectability by price. And then we use that to try to score them relative to one another in order to filter this giant cobweb of lines down to something like this, and then ultimately to identify the current relevant trend, which you can see on Microsoft is actually this wedge kind of shape going up. Now this is picking out wedges because it's using my settings, and I'm big on trading wedges. I really like to find when price is, rising or falling and the range is condensing. There's a million different ways you can set up the trend line detection, and when if I have time to jump into a live presentation, I can show you some of those different ways. The point here is this chart was generated in a split second. I didn't have to spend any time squinting at it. I didn't have to spend any time trying to figure it out myself. I was able to push a button and know that my rules for identifying trend lines would be applied perfectly, and that it would find anything that I would draw myself on it. So that's a big deal. And we think that will help a lot of traders, because what ends up happening here is as you flip through your watch list using your keyboard up and down arrows, each chart pulls up and it's already got your trend lines on it. You don't have to spend any time on that, which lets you move faster and cover more ground. If anyone has any questions about trend line detection, please ask them and I'll answer them at the end of this. Moving on, we also detect Fibonacci retracement levels on a completely automated basis. You can push a button on your chart and it will measure the most recent completed move and draw a Fibonacci retracement for you. This does not require you to spend any time on this chart trying to figure out what move to measure. It uses a regressive algorithm to identify not just the biggest move, but the biggest move relative to where price is today, to try to highlight the most relevant price action to measure to try to find a fib level for. And that's something that we have found to be pretty effective, and it can be customized using the trend settings to work any different way you want. What's really cool about these fib levels and the trend lines, and I'll get to this in a little bit, is you can right-click on any of them to create an alert at that level. And that lets you essentially get a quick analysis and then let the market come to you. Another tool that we have that helps traders get a better sense for their charts very quickly is what we call support and resistance heat maps. This is like everything we do, actually, this is open. We explain exactly how these are calculated on our website and our blog, so there's no mystery here. But these look for specific levels where there have been a lot of lows on red candles and a lot of highs on green candles to identify potential areas of resistance and support. We find this to be pretty effective. In fact, I don't recommend anyone do this, but we have a number of users who basically blindly trade these because they do prove to be very effective on certain charts. What's super cool about these is that they will look far back into the past. They'll look for areas where price has consolidated and struggled to break through before, where there's a lot of wicks. And then it'll extend those areas to the right so you can quickly see them in a split second as you pull up your chart. And this doesn't just work on long time frames, this works on short time frames all the way down to 1 minute. Again, I didn't have to spend any time on this chart trying to figure this out, right? This was done for me with an algorithm in the cloud, in a split second when I pushed the Turn Heat Maps On button in the toolbar. We think these are really powerful when combined with other forms of analysis. If you see, heat maps and trend lines and indicators all converging in the same general area, that might tell you something about that area, that it might be a struggle for price to push through it. So we definitely recommend you use these as a secondary, way to look at a chart and see a perspective that you probably wouldn't catch on your own. As we move through this, I just wanted to show one other chart of this. This is actually that same Microsoft chart. I just flipped this on after I took that first screenshot. And I think it's very interesting that, we have a bearish rising wedge pattern. It's traditionally a rising wedge when you see price going up, but the range condensing. And you see price basically stopping at the heat map level, right? And now it's, right under it. And we'll see. I mean, is this support resistance zone strong enough to force price down back through the blue trend line? We don't know. One thing we could easily do in this chart is we could just right click on that blue trend line and have the system watch it for us, so that if that does happen, we'll know. Moving on, we also can detect candlestick patterns and formations on your charts in a split second. And there's a full library of over 100 different candlestick formations that you can have the system highlight for you. Everything from the 3 method up upside one that we've highlighted here through hammers, through patterns, some proprietary patterns that are, you know, put out there by organ like T3 from Rob Smith over there. You know, there's a whole plethora of patterns. You can just push a button and enable them, and it will show you them on the chart in a split second, so you don't have to squint at the chart and try to figure it out. Right, and I know as like as an early trader myself, I used to spend a lot of time on candlestick patterns, not so much today, right? But I would spend a lot of time just like being like, is that a hammer? You know, is that a spinning top? Just kind of zooming in and squinting at the chart. What's super cool about this is this applies a mathematically precise definition to each pattern. So when you turn it on and you enable hammers, you know it's a hammer, right? It fits the mathematical definition for that. And we actually have a whole article on our blog, just like all our stuff in the interest of transparency, that gives you the specific definition for each pattern that we detect. So you can quickly look and say, okay, a hammer is this. What's really cool about this too is you can flip it on and off in a split second, right? There's just a button in the toolbar. You turn it on, you can see your patterns, turn it off, get the clutter off your screen, right? So for those candlestick pattern traders out there, that's a feature for you. One of our most popular and powerful features, and one of my personal favorites, is our multi-time frame analysis engine. Multi-time frame analysis is this concept that you know, is often talked about but rarely actually put into practice by traders. And the reason for that is a pain in the butt. You have to flip different time frames. You know, you're trying to analyze the same chart in multiple time frames. And if you're a shorter term minded trader, the market could move against you or move, you know, with you before you even have a chance to finish that up. TrendSpider makes it very easy to compare data from multiple time frames. What you see here in this screenshot is 4 separate Microsoft charts, but 8 separate time frames displayed on them. You'll notice that each chart window here has 2 time frames. And, you know, in the top left one, it's 1 hour versus 4 hours. That means that we're taking the trend lines, indicators, anything that I've got turned on from the 4-hour chart and putting it on the 1-hour chart. These Bollinger Bands are from the 4-hour chart, right? And similar with all of these, right? On this 15-minute chart on the top right, you have 1-hour Bollinger Bands, right? And you can see how the 15-minute price action interacts with those. And as you move down, you have the daily chart with the weekly bands and the weekly chart with the monthly bands. I want to be clear, this doesn't just work on Bollinger Bands. This works on pretty much anything in the system, from from Fibonacci levels to trend lines to drawings and chart annotations that you conduct yourself. You know, if you draw a trend line, you can control which time frames that line is transposed onto. And that's a powerful way to get perspective, right? You know, I like to say, I think I actually said it earlier, it gives you the ability to see the forest, excuse me, and the trees at the same time. And, you know, for me, I'm a swing trader. Right, it's really important for me to know when short-term price action approaches a long-term trend. You know, for me, that's an indicator that something's going to happen, right? And I want to know about that. So what's powerful about TrendSpider is you can right-click on any of these multi-time frame lines and create an alert on them. And I'll tell you a little bit about the alerts in a minute here. So, you know, this feature is extremely powerful. If anyone has any questions about it, you know, drop them in chat, and I'll happily cover them at the end here. The next thing I want to touch on is what we call raindrop charts. And raindrops are a proprietary concept that we've invented. It's something that we only rolled out to the world maybe a month and a half ago. So it's a new concept. And this is an entirely new type of timescale price chart. I'll go into how these are constructed in a moment, but what I want to highlight very quickly about them is these are volume adjusted candlesticks, essentially. They do not have open and close prices. They have volume adjusted average prices. And their colors work similar to a traditional candle, where a green one means it's bullish and a red one means it's bearish. But you also have these very special blue ones where the volume adjusted price is balanced throughout the period. And when you find these type of candlesticks forming on a trend line, like you see in this screenshot I have here from XLF, this is actually from a few weeks ago, right? When you see these forming on a trend line, you can basically bet that there's going to be some type of reaction. You see that very commonly whenever you see a blue raindrop form at any kind of support or resistance level. Otherwise, they do tend to precede volatility. They do tend to, you know, foreshadow future points of support and resistance. And the reason that they work that way is because they try to abstract away the arbitrary concepts that are normal in candlestick charts. There is no open or closed price in a raindrop. Instead, you have a left and a right volume-weighted price, right? And that's an average of the volume of the prices that people paid during the second and the first half of the trading session. So when you see volume flowing up on a range drop, it means that the price and the buying pressure from the volume has been increasing in the same direction. And when you see them at the same level, the VWAPs at the same level, it's a true doji, a true indicator of market indecision, right? It means if this were a 1 hour, candle range drop with a blue color to it, it would mean that people paid the same price on a volume weighted basis that entire hour for that security. We all know what a doji is when the open and close price are aligned. This is a take on the doji, a true doji. And it's something that we find very powerful. And if I have time to pop into the system, I'll show you a few examples of this in live charts. Next capability in TrendSpider is our backtesting engine. So, there's a million different trading strategies out there. You may dream one up one day while taking a shower. What if I buy, when RSI does this or MACD does that, or when price does this? A lot of times we trade these blindly with real money and, hope that they work out just to see, with a small amount, as a way to test them out. Or we use a simulator, right? We present a different option, and that is our visual inline backtesting engine. And this eliminates the need to guess and stress because you can plug any conditions you can dream up into it and test them against historical market data. Unlike any backtester, it will assume perfect execution. So you probably won't get the same, results. You'll probably perform a little worse because you're not a computer. But it will tell you whether or not that strategy has any edge relative to buy and hold in that same security. And you can see on this hexo chart, it did and then it didn't, and now it does because a buy and holding would be in the red. And if you were trading whatever strategy I had in here, you would actually still be in the black. What's super cool about this is it's in line with the charts. So once you set up a backtest, as you flip through your charts, the backtest will run at the same time as your analysis. Your chart will come up with your trend lines on it. Your backtest will be performed. All the information will be presented to you instantaneously so you can make quick decisions, right? And if you see something you like, you can then create an alert with the backtester to let you know the next time those conditions materialize on that chart. So you're not sitting there staring at it. This was, by the way, just a really simple backtest where all we did was buy when price opened above the previous day's high or low, and then sell when the opposite happened. It was a pretty simple strategy. I think it may have had a volume component. The next thing I want to highlight, and this is my personal favorite feature in the system, and it's one of the reasons I kind of saved it for last year, is the alerting engine. This is just one type of alert in TrendSpider, right? There's multiple types of alerts, but what these let you do is have a life while being a trader, right? You don't have to sit there and stare at 50 charts all day, right? Waiting for one of them to break, one of them to bounce, or whatever you're watching for. You can set alerts in TrendSpider on any visual element you see, any trend line, any indicator. You can combine any data points you can dream up, from the candlestick patterns to the movement of the price, the changes in volume. You can combine anything you can dream up into an alert and then send that to TrendSpider's cloud. And our servers in the cloud, which have high-speed market data connections going directly into them, will then take over monitoring that setup for you from the cloud in real time. And when your conditions materialize, you're going to get a text message, you're going to get an email, right? And you're going to get a lot of beeping noises if you happen to have TrendSpider open on your screen to let you know that your conditions have set up. I just want to highlight what's really cool about these is they're not your standard alerts. I mean, I know a lot of people have alerts in their brokerage platforms. These are way different. For one, standard broker alerts wait for price to trade at a certain level. It's like alert me when Microsoft trades at 137.80, right? And that would be your alert, right? TrendSpider waits for a defined event. It waits for the candlestick to actually break through that line, right? It waits for the candlestick to touch and then pull back for a touch. It waits for a candlestick to touch it and then a second candlestick to bounce back for a bounce, right? These are defined events that are designed to mimic how a human, how a person would do the same thing if they were watching the chart by hand. You wouldn't care if you had a long wick, touch the line, pull back real quick and, just re-enters the range. That's not a meaningful event to you. So if you're watching for a breakout, all you have to do is enable the breakout detection on it. What else is cool is you can define the buffer zone and a time frame that the alert goes off. A buffer zone is a number of dollars in either direction of that line at any given moment. In this case, I have it set to 56 cents, right? This lets me get an alert when price comes within 56 cents and bounces back, right? Or touches an area within 56 cents of that line. That lets me control how quick my alert is and if I get alerted on approach or on direct hit or whatever I want. Finally, I can control what candlestick the system actually looks for there, right? So, this is a 1 hour chart, but I'm waiting for a 10-minute candlestick to touch or bounce this line within a 56-cent buffer zone in either range. That's powerful. You're using a lot of different time frames and a lot of different tools here, and you're outsourcing them to the cloud so you don't have to do it yourself. For me, there's no other way to trade than to just set up a ton of alerts and go about your life until they start to go off. And that brings me to how we tie all this together, right? You start by automating your grunt work. Let TrendSpider's algorithms and technology analyze your charts for you, your way, right? Go through charts a lot faster because you don't have to spend the time analyzing them, right? You can just flip through them. When you see something you like, then you can dive into it and spend some time on it and decide if you really like it or not. But let TrendSpider take that first glance for you. Right. When you see a strategy that you want to try, you can develop, test, and refine it in the platform without risking your capital using the backtester. You can use our proprietary visualizations like raindrops and heat maps and some other things we have in there to see things that other traders are most likely going to miss. Right. Multi-time frame analysis is fantastic for this. Right. You can see the monthly trend on the daily chart. Most daily chart traders aren't looking that far back. And all of this allows you to find better setups. Right, and when you find them, you can use alerts to monitor them for you to let you know when price has entered your buy or sell zones, and then you can just relax and let the market come to you. Right. So, if anyone has any chart requests or wants me to jump into the system and kind of highlight a few things, I'm happy to do that here. Right. But just to kind of show off the tool here, this is the live tool. I have trend line detection turned on, and if my strategy here was to buy Microsoft, I'm not saying it is, or maybe short Microsoft when it breaks through this 4-hour Bollinger Band, all I have to do is right-click on it and go to create an alert there, right? And I can set up my alert to do whatever I want it to do, and I can create that alert and have the system watch it for me. If I'm like an RSI trader and I want to know when RSI gets oversold on this particular chart, I can just create a condition here in one of our other types of alerts for when RSI is, I don't know, let's say it crosses down through the constant level of 40, right? And have the system watch this chart for me so that I don't have to. And that's how we help traders, right? These are a lot of the same tools that a lot of the big institutions have. As we develop the system and move forward, we're going to expand the functionality in it so you can actually automate the trades themselves and have it place orders for you. But for now, it will watch charts like a hawk for you and let you know when there's something worth looking at on it. So with that, I'd like to just pop into a Q&A if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to answer them. I'm also happy to pull up any charts and show you raindrops or heat maps or any of our proprietary features on anything. And if you're interested in trying the platform, we do have a promotional offer that, you can try it for free for 7 days. And if you decide that you like it and you end up renewing it, you can get 25% off a year, and that's valid on any of our plans, right? And all you have to do is try it out on TrendSpider.com using the coupon code IVZC3. So with that, I'd just like to see, does anyone have any questions or want me to cover any charts?
Yeah, hi, Dan. Yeah, one person wanted you to dig in a little more on the raindrop. Please explain
Absolutely.
the raindrop in more detail.
Absolutely.
And for me personally also, I've never seen that before, and I would love to just see more about it.
Absolutely, and I would, be a pleasure.
Because right now when I'm looking at it, for me personally, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Absolutely. And a lot of people have that reaction when they first see these. So here's a raindrop chart. Let me just clean it up a little bit for Amazon, right? And this is the daily chart for it. And what a raindrop is. So let's pick one of them. I'm just going to put an arrow on this blue one right here, right? So everybody can see which one I'm pointing to. Like a traditional candlestick, it has a high and a low, right? So this is the range of the candle or the raindrop is the same as the range of a traditional hollow candlestick or price bar or whatever. It does not have an open or a close, right? Instead, it is divided in two halves. The left half represents the first half of that trading period. So we're currently on the daily chart. So the left half represents the first 3¼ hours of that day. The right half represents the second half of the trading period, so the second 3¼ hours. The little dash on either side represents the volume weighted average price for that half, right? So it's the VWAP for that half of the period. When the VWAP is on the right is above the VWAP on the left, the range wrap becomes green, right? And that indicates it's basically the same thing as it closed above the open, right? Except it's the volume weighted price, not the close that it's comparing. When the opposite happens and the left VWAP, the opening VWAP, is higher than the closing VWAP, it becomes red, right? And that indicates that its price has moved down with it. Now you can see that this blob around the range wrap kind of shows the flow of the volume, and that is literally a volume histogram rotated 90 degrees and converted into an area plot chart, right? So what that shows you is that during the first half of the day on this red range wrap right here, the volume was concentrated at the top of the period. And during the second half of the day, and there's very little volume on the second half of the day at the top of the period, right? And during the second half of the day, there was no volume, in the lower end of, the higher end of the range, and all the volume was concentrated at the bottom. So it combines a volume histogram with a candlestick to give you a way to see them both together. And it shows you the flow of sentiment, not just the flow of price, right? Because normally you would have to add a side volume profile and a bottom volume histogram to be able to see, somewhat similar information here. Now, what we found, and this is a proprietary visualization you can only get in TrendSpider. Our CTO invented this. It's something that we found to have a lot of utility, in particular with options trading, because what you end up seeing is these blue range wraps form before there's volatility. They kind of work like you would expect a doji to work, right? Where there's a period of indecision, it would have to break one way or the other, right? The market is kind of stalled for a bit every time you see one of these. So when you do like a back test on these, and this is that back test I had in my presentation. I'm just going to delete it really quick. But let's say you do a back test here where you want to see what happens, within 10 candles of a blue range wrap forming. And let's make sure we're on the same chart. We're on the daily chart here, right? We can run that back test, and you'll see that the price kind of gyrates a whole lot, right? Like, it's not an effective strategy to just buy and sell 10 candles later. But if you look at the min-max drawdown chart, you can see that every time we're in a trade from a range wrap, there's a lot of volatility around it, right? These blobs around it, like in some cases, some of these 10 candles in have moved 20% up, 18% down, right? So what we've also found is that when you see these blue range wraps forming near a support zone, near a resistance zone, right, call it a trend line or an indicator or anything like that, right, it is a pretty decent sign that it may reverse there, right, because the market is really struggling to move any which direction once it hit that price level. So we found these to be fascinating. We don't pretend to fully understand, their ramifications because they're new. And, while we invented the technology behind them, we're just as new as everybody else in using them ourselves as traders. But we do find them to be really interesting and useful. The other thing that is worth highlighting, and I can't remember, I think Hexo is a good example of this. There's one chart, maybe it's on the 1 hour chart, but there's other formations that we found with some of these range wraps, like for example balloons, right? And I can try to clean up my chart here and see if I can find an example here. But you often see like a balloon. You're not seeing one on Hexo here, but you often would see like a long-tailed range wrap with a kind of balloony top. It looks like a balloon. This exit one is an inverse balloon right here. You can see the one with this exit marker on it, right? Which indicates, that it's a strong move in that direction, right? There is no volume at the top of this range, right? From 450 to 440, all the volume was concentrated over here, right? I'm going to turn my crosshair on because it's driving me nuts that it's off, right? But all the volume here was concentrated, in the 448s here, right, on this particular one. When you see the reverse of this, coming off a trend line at the bottom or during a breakout from a trend line or an indicator, it kind of indicates that there's a strong move going on there. You can also see some blue range wraps on this Hexo symbol here. Let me get rid of these silly backtest markers, right, forming at, bottoms, right, forming at tops, forming in continuations. Here's one that actually formed right here at this trend line before it pulled back a little bit and finally broke through here. Right, so they're very interesting, and I mean, they require a lot of study. We have a group of finance grad students at a university studying these right now to try to identify different patterns in them. We've demoed these to the Chart Market Technicians Association and have a number of people from there looking into these because we think it's going to take a community of efforts to really fully understand them. The other thing I want to highlight about raindrops is really interesting is they also tend to volume weight your indicators, both lower and upper, right? So like when I add, when I add moving averages, right, to this chart here, they become volume weighted moving averages, right? When I add RSI to my chart down here, it becomes a volume weighted RSI, right? Because there's no close price for these to be drawn from. Right. Instead, there's a volume-weighted price for everything to be calculated off of. So by kind of derivative nature, everything becomes volume-weighted. And that goes as far as auto trend lines, right? I can turn trend lines on and switch this to draw body to body. And you're going to see different trend lines forming because these are now taking into account the VWAPs, not the highs and the lows, right? And you end up with, in some cases, very interesting trend lines, and in some cases, stuff that's not too useful this way. But it is a different way to kind of interpret data.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions about these?
Yeah.
I could spend all day talking about them.
Yeah, actually, Jeff asks, can you take a look at Aurora Cannabis, acb.to? So I guess it's on the Toronto Exchange.
I think I've actually been following this one myself.
Can you bring that up?
Yes. Yep. So here you have Aurora Cannabis. All right, and you can see I've been kind of following it a little bit myself. Actually, I tend to look on longer time frames, but you basically have a bunch of raindrops forming up here, blue ones, right? As it consolidated, when it broke through those and sold down, you have a continuation. You have another blue one forming on Friday here, so it'll be interesting. Is this going to cause volatility up or volatility down? You can then kind of zoom in and try to see from smaller time frames, right? This is that raindrop right there broken down, and maybe, I mean, to me it might look like a bit of a falling wedge type of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure, but maybe that's maybe a sign that it's kind of bottomed a little bit. You can see here, there's a blue one that has formed. They're pretty rare, and we found when you combine these with anyone here familiar with like Alpha Trend's anchored VWAP, Brian Shannon's thing? When you combine these with an anchored VWAP, which you can create in TrendSpider by right-clicking on any candle or raindrop, right, we find that they tend to kind of, in a lot of ways, be a good anchor point for them, right? Because price was fully balanced here, so if you're going to anchor a VWAP anywhere, it might make sense to anchor it there. And then you could look and see, okay, well, anchored from the last time price was completely balanced, we are still below that VWAP. So I don't know if this is bullish or not, right? Although I think Brian would probably balk at this use of anchored VWAP. He would probably say you have to anchor it from from the gap up point, in which case, you're still below it, right? Any particular time frames or anything you want to see on ACB? I mean, I can turn on, auto trend lines on it. These are actually being drawn body to body. I can switch these to wick to get a kind of more traditional falling channel that the system will detect there. And if you're like trading this symbol and you're using TrendSpider, you may say, okay, I'm going to get bullish if it gets above this green line. So you would just right click on the line, go to create an alert, right? I only care if it breaks through. So I'm going to select breakthrough. I'm going to give it a little buffer zone because I've noticed that price doesn't always get directly up to this line when it approaches it. Here and here it came close, but no direct touch. So I'm going to give it a 20-cent buffer zone just to make sure I know when price is approaching it again. And I'm going to make this alert go off. I'm on the daily charts. I'm going to have this alert go off on a 1-hour candle. This will then tell the system to watch this trend line from the 1-hour chart for a breakthrough. And I can have it watch it for up to a month. I mean, it's not going to need that long, but I can have it set that, and I can now forget about it, right? And if I'm gonna play this both ways, I can also send alert on this bottom trend line here and say, alert me if price ever breaks down through this line here, also on the 1-hour chart. And this side might actually need 30 days, so I could set that up too. And now I've set it and forget it, right? Like this is going to be translated into computer code, transferred to our server in the cloud. And the server will sit there and check the market 3,000 times per trading session. So that's every 6.5 hours during the day, and check for these conditions to be true. And like you'll notice, like I can, I can open I have this watch list here of potential trades. So as I flip through this, right, you'll see that each chart I pull up, right, if there's enough data for there to be trend lines drawn on it, the trend lines will show up drawn for me, right? A lot of my symbols are kind of weird and obscure, so that may not be the case. If I've messed around with the charts myself, those drawings will be there as well. And this is actually a great chart to highlight one important thing. Automated trend lines and automated fibs are point in time, right? So this analysis was conducted on APHA at July 25th at looks like about 2 p.m. It's obviously no longer valid. Price is broken out here, right? So I can click this refresh button and tell the system to reanalyze this chart. And you can see now, it's cleaned it up for me, and it's identified this black line I had on there myself, but it's identified kind of its current falling wedge pattern, and even that it's kind of broken out a little bit from it here. So what's cool about this is that was really fast, right? And like, if I only have a few hours on the weekend to flip through charts, right, and figure out if I want to trade something or not, it eats into my family time, right? It eats into all kinds of stuff. So instead, I can just lean on some technology. And what I know as a fact, every time I pull up a chart in TrendSpider is it's analyzed the exact same way, right? Like I set up my rules, and you can set up your own. There's different settings. There's a whole advanced section where you can customize like exactly what it's looking for all kinds of different things. And once you do that, you know that every time it's done the same. And when you see something you create an alert and move on with your life. Any other questions or anything else?
Yeah, Dan has a question of, no, actually Terry. Terry's asking, can you show an example of using Bollinger Bands on a stock where,
Sure.
I guess when it tags the top or tags the bottom, it's giving you alerts?
Sure. So you can set that up for sure. So let me just flip through a traditional candle chart. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add 2 separate sets of Bollinger Bands to this chart. So it's a 1-hour chart, but I also have the daily Bollinger Bands on it, right? And you can see that represented by the dashed versions of the Bollinger Bands being from the secondary time period, right? So like this is a daily chart on CGC here. If my strategy was to play bounces between the bands, I could, like let's say I want to play the middle band from the daily versus, I don't know, the bottom band from the 1 hour. I just right-click on the band, create an alert, and I would, I probably want to know in a breakthrough of the middle band, but I really want to know in touches and bounces, right? And I'm going to give it a bit of a buffer zone, because if you look in the past, right, there's times where price has come close but hasn't touched it, and there's times where price has touched it, right, and pulled back. So I want to know if price comes close to this. So I'm going to give it a buffer zone. Let's call it 35 cents, right? And I'm also going to make this alert go off on the 15-minute chart. Despite this being a daily Bollinger Band, from the 1-hour chart, I can still set a third time period on the confirmation candle. And that will give me a faster alert, right? Because it will wait for that candle to close. I can then give it a name, right? So I can say, I don't know, middle BB interaction, right? And since it's a daily chart, it may take a little bit, so I'll watch it for 7 days. Boom. That's now created an alert on the middle band. Now let's say I also want alerts on this daily or this 1-hour band here as well. I can do the same thing. Right-click on that one. I want to know touch bounce. I actually want to know breakthrough, because if price pulls under a Bollinger Band, it's probably pretty bullish that it's going to pull back over it, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. That's a 1-hour lower band, right? I'm still going to make it fire on the 15-minute chart. I'm still going to give it a little bit of a buffer zone because price doesn't always touch it exactly. I'm going to call this lower BB interaction and set this for a week as well, right? So now I've created these alerts, and the system will do this for me and watch it forever, right? Or for 30 days or until it goes off. You can also I forgot to do this, but you can also have the alert go off multiple times. So if you're like playing ping pong type of thing, if like something's really bouncing back and forth, you can set it to trigger the alert up to 10 times. And then, the alert won't deactivate once it goes off. It'll just text you up to 10 times as it goes off. Pretty cool,
Okay.
huh?
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. Lisa is asking, do you do Elliott wave analysis?
We don't right now. A lot of people have been asking for it, and it's on the roadmap. We do a lot of things, and it's just we only have 7 developers, so it takes time to add things. But Elliott Waves and then also Ichimoku clouds have been very heavily requested, and those are coming very soon, hopefully in August.
Okay, sounds good. And then for me personally, a question I have is just about volume spikes.
Sure.
When a candlestick or one of your raindrops do a certain thing on high volume, I mean, can you maybe show me some examples of how you can leverage volumes, especially if it's like on 2 times volume or 3 times volume for the day, something like that?
Correct. So you can do fancy things with volume. I haven't spent a lot of time during this presentation on what we call multi-factor alerts, but this is a different type of alert. You don't right-click on things to create these alerts. You create conditional criteria. So, for example, some people like to buy when MACD fast crosses MACD slow, but they only want to do that when volume is high. So you can create that criteria there, and you can add another condition here, right? And you can say, I want this to be true. I want the MACD on the 30-minute to cross, but on the 5-minute chart, I want the volume to be above, maybe even to have just crossed up or just greater than, right, the 5-minute volume MA. But you can also mix time frames here. So you can say, okay, I also want the 15-minute volume to be greater than the daily volume, or whatever you might want to dream up here, right, or the 4-hour volume moving average, right? So you can mix and match all kinds of different volume conditions here, and you can combine these in backtests as well as in alerts, right? So like, let's say we're playing with this, we want to test this, right? We can just say test this as an entry condition and see what happens when we buy when these conditions are true, and hold for 10 candles, right? Alternatively, we can say, okay, we want to hold for 10 candles, right? Or let's say we want to sell when the MACD crosses down, right? So you can say like MACD fast, crossed down through MACD slow, right? And you can test a different strategy here, right? And just see how that performs, which actually seems a little bit worse, right? And like, you can keep messing around with these to find out what kind of works best on what chart, right? And you can click see on chart, and it'll plot your moves for you. I'm backtesting pretty far back here, so I'm not going to see any. But if you backtest on like the chart view, right, you'll definitely see, and my drawings are turned off. I'm an idiot, right? But you'll see, those entries and exits on the chart, so you can then, go in and tweak your conditions a little bit differently. Volume is just one of hundreds of different conditions you can use. You can have conditions on RSI crossing up, MACD crossing itself, right? Vortex bouncing off each other, Williams being at a certain level, and a bounce off an SMA, and that can be just one alert, and that alert can span up to 5 separate time frames, right? So you can be watching for daily RSI oversold conditions with 5-minute bullish conditions if that's the type of reversal that you're looking for. Does that help?
No, that sounds good. And Jackson asks, do you have any functionality on positive or negative divergence on particular indicators
So
compared
yes,
to the underlying?
Yes and no. So you can obviously draw divergence, right, manually, just like in any other tool. You can use multi-factor alerts to identify divergence, right? So you can set conditions where it's like RSI has increased while price has decreased. But it won't visually highlight divergence at the moment. That is a feature that we're probably 80% done with, right? So, you select your indicator, and it'll identify, the same period of time whether the indicator is, diverging from the price action or not, and highlight that for you. But it's not available today. But that's one of the things that's coming. Like I said earlier, it takes a lot of time to build tools like this, and we're particularly anal about making sure that our math is correct. That's why, when a feature rolls out like backtesting, for example, that was available internally for 2 months before we rolled it out publicly. That's because we spent 2 months extensively testing it, right, and making sure, auditing the trade logs that it generates, right, and just making sure manually that it was doing everything correct. Divergence is going to be similar. We'll probably be done coding it this month, and then we'll probably need a little bit of time to beta test it and make sure it works. But you can always reach out to me. My email is just dan@TrendSpider, if you're interested in beta testing it at your big divergence trader, because we will be looking for divergence traders to help us test that. I'm a big divergence guy myself too, so you know, I'm pretty excited about that feature as well.
Okay, thank you, Dan. A couple more questions, and I think we have 5 minutes left for your session here. Let's see, is there a dark night mode? This is Mount Doji. He's asking, he or she is asking, is there a dark night mode on TrendSpider?
There is. Everything's customizable. So, you know, if I'm in a dark mode, I probably want to make my candle colors a little different. I had black down candles, but you can select from 3 different color themes and customize everything else pretty deeply. You know, from candle colors. Personally, I can never use a dark theme. We also have you know, a kind of a joke theme, but some people actually really like it where it's just this bright blue. But I prefer the light theme personally, but you can totally have dark themes, and you can change colors of anything.
Okay. And Mount Doji also asked, where do the alerts get sent? Where do we see them?
So great question. A few different places. There's an alert panel on the left here. Oops, I don't know what I'm doing there. There's an alert panel on the left here, which will have every alert. These are the ones I have. You can see I've been following a lot of the Canadian marijuana stocks lately. So they'll show up here. When an alert goes off, it'll send you an email and it'll also SMS you. And you can also control quiet hours. If you're a crypto trader or you're a Forex trader or you're a futures person, you know, and you want to get some sleep sometime, you can disable the alerts, you know, during certain hours or during certain days. If you have the app open, you'll get a blue pop-up in the right corner. The alert in the panel will flash yellow, and your computer will make a very obnoxious beeping noise, right? It's intended to get your attention.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kirk has a question. He says, rather than provide alerts on specific stock movement, can the software identify stocks that meet general criteria for, say, you know, opening a put or buying a call credit spread?
Yeah, not at the moment, but that's absolutely coming this year. It's on our Q3 roadmap. The system will have both the ability to scan the market for certain technical criteria using the same language and tools that you use to do back tests and create alerts, and generate a smart watch list for you. And then you'll also have the ability to run alerts against that watch list, right? So you can have a smart watch list that looks for your kind of some fundamental criteria, you know, kind of your list of things you're watching, and then you can have an alert running against that watch list that looks for your entry and exit criteria. I don't know, do I even have that slide in here? I don't have that slide with me right now. I think this slide might have it. But our roadmap is pretty extensive, right, in where we're taking this. So if you can see my screen still, you know, the stuff we have now is really cool, but the ultimate goal here is to actually allow you to automate your actual trades, right? There's no reason that you can't create an alert that has buy and sell conditions in it, right? You have your entry and then all your various exits, right? A profit exit, a trailing stop, a stop loss, you know, all different types of exits that you might have, technical exits, and have the system place that trade on your behalf into your brokerage account when you click approve, right? So that's where we're taking this. By this time next year, you'll be able to create an alert with an order ticket tied to it. When the set conditions set up, you'll get a mobile notification on a companion app that we're building right now. That app will give you the chart, the ticket, the ability to tweak anything that you might want to tweak if you want to, and a quick yes or no button. If you press yes, it logs into your interactive brokers or your TD Ameritrade or whatever you use, places the order for you, and instantly begins monitoring all your exit conditions right away from the cloud. Right, and that will enable people who have day jobs and lives to trade because you can set up all your possible trades ahead of time, right? You got it all completely planned out, and then you're just waiting for the market to come to you. So that's where we're taking it. You know, a lot of these questions people are asking are part of that journey to get there. You know, everything needs to be kind of built in a specific order. You know, like we can't do the automated trade thing until we have alerts and watch lists. And we can't do that until we can scan the market. So like all these things kind of build on each other. But I mean, this is an active project. You know, there's a team of 15 full-time people that spend every day doing nothing but working on it. Right. And I mean, our goal is to build a tool that can facilitate any type of trading for anybody. You know, whatever their strategy is, and make them more effective, you know, kind of level that playing field. So I know I'm running out of time here, so if anyone has any other questions, my email is dan@trendspider.com. Drop me a note. If you want to try it out, we have a free trial offer. We give one-on-one training sessions during free trials, so if somebody wants to sign up and feels lost, schedule a training. It's totally worth it, and it's free, right? And if you like it and decide to renew and want to support our work as we move towards, automating the whole journey of trading, you can renew, and there's a coupon code on the screen for you. So thank you very much again for being here, everybody.
Okay, Dan, thank you very much. That was really interesting. This looks like an excellent tool, and I love these raindrops. That really does provide quite a bit of insight. Anything that's volume related is really, really powerful. And so anything that has volume in it, when it comes to indicators, candlesticks with volume built into it, that's excellent, because that's very powerful.
Well, thank you again, and I'm going to pass controls back to you now.